Good morning, church.
Good morning.
That's good. Wow. So I have written down here, spring is sprung, and we are blessed to live in such a beautiful place. Don't we live in a beautiful city? We do. So I wanted to share this with you this morning. My sermon is Grace Unwrapped, the Divine Presence. But I also want to share with you how the messages come to me. I used to be a motivational speaker where I would go out and I'd speak. I'd get a date, I'd create a topic, and then I would prepare whatever it is I was going to say. That does not happen as a minister. As a minister, the moment I say I am going to speak on a particular day, something opens up. And that something that opens up is a space. And that space is grace. And then ideas start pouring into me. And all I have to do is stand there. Now the interesting thing is I could get a date that's a month down the road, and the topic won't come to me until the day before I'm supposed to speak. Now, that's the challenge. But this particular topic, it's amazing how it flooded into me. So Tuesday, I go to Carlsbad Library with my ballot, and I'm walking up like everybody else to deposit our ballots. Now you have to understand, I live in a city where very few people look like me. Very few people look like me. Okay? If I see 3 other black people, I'm like, we're going to have a parade. So I walked up, and I'm waiting in line to drop my ballot off, and something flooded into my consciousness. I didn't have to worry about somebody saying to me, you can't be here, you need to leave. Or you need to go over there and you need to pay money. Or you need to fill out these papers. Or just somebody pushing me out of the line saying you don't belong here. I didn't have to think about that. Nobody around me paid any attention to me. I was undisturbed. I dropped my ballot in like everybody else, and I walked to my car. But what dropped in my spirit in that moment was grace. It was grace that had it okay for me to go and drop my ballot in that box. And that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about this morning. Grace is a power and presence in the universe that allows us as human beings to step forward and change and do things we've never done before, and to alter the way we think, the way we show up. All my life growing up, I had this, confusion about grace. Like people would say God's grace. I didn't know what that meant. Intellectually, I couldn't grasp it. They would say, God's grace is always with you. I didn't understand it, but as I got older and my spirituality deepened, I understood that it's an energy that emanates from spirit. It emanates from us because we are spirit. It is a presence, a helping presence that operates in our life from birth to death. It's a blessing. And when we falter or stumble or stall in life, and we feel like we might be failing, or in times of discouragement or disappointment, it is grace. That is that light, that little bitty light on the horizon. And it's a powerful energy allowing us to know there's hope. There's a glimmer of hope. How many of you have ever been in a dark, dark place? And all of a sudden, it was this little glimmer, just a little glimmer, that said, wow, there's some hope. That's grace. It allows us to rise after falling. It allows us to have hope after a deep, deep loss. Many of us are experiencing the loss of someone we love. Grace is that presence that allows us to get up and move forward. Even inside of our grief, it's grace that allows us to move forward. It's also that wonderful feeling that surfaces as forgiveness, healing, and spiritual abundance. It's an energy that flows from us when we are of service. That's why we feel so good when we're being of service, when we're giving. That's why we feel good, because it's grace. Grace is flowing out from us. Grace has us feel good because it's an energy of love. It's not an energy that we think about. It's ours. It's part of us. It's our divinity. When we understand the helping nature of grace, we live in a more secure and we live a more secure and relaxed life. We're not worried. We're not fretting. We're not concerned and living inside of anxiety. Grace does not show up like anxiety. If you are living inside of anxiety, you have terrorized yourself out of grace. Let me say that again. You have terrorized yourself out of grace. Because grace is always here. It's always with us. And if it's not, you're the one that made it go away. It didn't go away on its own. Well, it didn't go away, it's there. You're the one that's not recognizing it. It's always there. Never goes away. But you block it out with thoughts and all that. Grace is what has us get on the boat and take that trip across troubled waters to a smoother place. Boat be rocking. We're feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to drown. I'm not going to make it. Grace is what smooths everything over for us. And all we have to do is remember. That's all you have to do is just remember. Ernest Holmes puts it this way. We need not coerce. We do not create the power. But we must let this great power operate through us. We have to allow it to operate through us. We don't have to force it. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to work to get it. If we did, we wouldn't have grace. Because none of us want to do the work. We needed to do the habit. It's a gift. And it's a gift that shows up in the present. That's why I like that play on word. It's a gift, it's a present from God. And it shows up in the present. It doesn't show up in the past. The past is a memory. It doesn't show up in the future. The future is a vision. It shows up right here, right now, in the present. So now I'd like to unwrap grace. I just gave you my definition of what it is, how it shows up. Now I want to unwrap it. And I want to unwrap it in a way that lets you see that grace gives us road signs throughout our life. So I'm going to share with you how it showed up in my life. And as I'm going through the stages of development, I'm going to start with childhood, and I'm going to go all the way up to elderhood. I want you to think about your life. So I'm going to break it down according to the letters. So I'm going to start with the letter G. So as a child, I learned to say grace at every meal. My mom would always ask me, did you say grace? Did you say grace? She didn't say, did you bless your food? My mother would say, did you say grace? And what she was teaching me was to be grateful. So the first letter of grace for me is gratitude, to be grateful. She was saying, did you say thank you for the food that you have? Because everybody doesn't have the type of food that we have. And you have to be grateful for that. So I learned gratitude, and I understood as I got older that the more I was grateful, the more I had to be grateful for. And it started showing up everywhere. It didn't just show up with my food. It started showing up in other areas of my life. And that gratitude started to grow and expand. And it helped me to show appreciation for God's gift. I have to also say my mom was named Grace. That helped me a whole lot. How it showed up as a power in my life. At 11 years old, it was grace that helped me be grateful for my life, because I was terrorized when I heard that there were 4 little girls who looked like me, that were my age, who had been blown up in their church at Sunday school. That terrified me. But it was grace that let me know, you're okay. You're okay. You can be grateful for your life. You're okay. Because as a little girl, that scared me. And I loved my Sunday school, and I loved church. And it was like, oh my God, I can't go to church. No. Calm yourself. And it was grace that just poured over me. Now at 11 years old, I did not know that. I just knew that the terror left and that I was okay. And I stopped worrying about going to church and being scared. So in childhood, the energy of grace presented to me as gratitude. Now let's move into adolescence. So in adolescence, I will use responsible to represent the R in the word grace. So in adolescence, I learned to be responsible for my behaviors, for my actions, for my physical space. I learned to be responsible for my room, for my clothes. I learned to be responsible to do my homework, getting it done on time. That was my responsibility. I learned how to be responsible to show up in the world and be respectful to adults, and to be friend and compassionate to my friends. All of this came to me inside of adolescence as responsibility. And grace showed up this way. At 14 years old, in junior high school, we used to always leave school. We'd leave campus and go to a friend's house, a group of us, to party. There were no drugs at that time. We would just take our 45 records, some of you remember them, and we'd play and we'd dance, and I was always the one who was like conscious, right? I was like, oh, we gotta go back. I had a watch. My mother gave me a watch when I was like 7 years old. You need to know how to get back home on time. So I would look at the watch, oh my God, we gotta go back. And we'd all pack up, and because we weren't supposed to be off campus. And we'd all pack up and we'd all go back. So this one particular day, we were all going back, and I noticed that one friend, Matthew, just ran off from us. And I was like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm not going back. I'm going to hang out with Clarence. And I'm like, he was an older student. He wasn't in our school. And I said, Clarence is a criminal. Clarence steals cars. You need to come back. You're going to go to jail. And he just went on. I was taught to be responsible for myself. I needed to get myself back to school and try to get as many others back to school as I could. Because if they caught us, they were going to snitch. You know, they was going to tell on everybody. So it was my job to herd everybody back to school. But I didn't get to herd Matthew back. 3 hours later, Matthew was shot and killed by police, running away from that stolen car. So at 14, I was like, filled with guilt because I didn't stop him. That was my job, to stop him. It wasn't my job, but at 14, I thought that was my job. It was grace that helped me get past that. But it also taught me something about responsibility. It taught me I have to be responsible for my life. Because responsibility means that I can stand inside of safety. When I'm responsible, safety shows up, grace shows up. It keeps me in a place where I can move through life without things occurring to me that shouldn't occur to me. So in adolescence, grace showed up as responsibility. And I was able to move through that. It took me years to let go of the grief and the guilt, but I was able to move through it in junior high school. And I have to also say, during that time, my community exploded because black people went crazy in San Francisco, and our community just exploded in riots. They had to bring in the National Guard and a whole lot of other stuff. But at that particular moment, as a 14-year-old, I learned how responsibility meant I needed to take care of me, and it was grace that washed over me. So now we move into young adulthood. The word for A in grace for me is acceptance. So in adolescence, I learned how to be accepting of life. To not fight against it, because you know, that's what we do in adolescence. You're supposed to do this? No, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. No, you're supposed to go that way? No, I don't want to go that way. I'm going to go this way. I learned to accept in young adulthood that whatever showed up in my life, I didn't have to like it. I didn't even have to appreciate it. But it was great for me to just accept it, because I learned when I accepted it, my life was not so difficult. And grace was there. Now, once again, grace showed up at another time where there was excruciating, devastating pain in my life. 2 days after my 21st birthday, my best friend was murdered by an unknown assailant. And I was plunged into this darkness. It was grace that allowed me to come out of that darkness, but to accept that this happened. Not fight against it, but to accept that this happened, to be inside of the grief, but to be grateful I was alive. At that moment, I learned to be grateful for my life and to accept that things are going to happen in life that are going to impact me, but I still have something to be grateful for. I had taken responsibility for my life. She had put herself in a situation that allowed that to occur. So again, it's like every lesson that was before a certain age group, I was like, okay, I remember that. Okay, I remember that. Okay, I remember that. So young adulthood, that's what I learned. So we move into adulthood. So what shows up in adulthood? In adulthood, I'm going to use commitment and courage to represent C, the letter C in grace. As adults, we learn to be committed. We commit to our families, we commit to our jobs, whatever it is we're going to do, we learn to commit. But we also learn that we have to have courage inside of those commitments. Because sometimes you'll make a commitment and you'll find that it terrifies you. And it's grace that shows up that gives you the courage to stand up. How many of you in adulthood was like, oh my God, I can't do that, but you had to commit to it anyway. And you had to move forward. It's like, I got these children, I don't know what to do with them. You had to stand inside of courage to just know that you would be okay and you would be able to move forward and take care of them. So, in adulthood, we may not know how to go, where to go. We may not have the resources. We may not have the support. But because we've learned to be grateful, responsible, and accept life, we can stand firm in commitment and understand and know that we're going to get the spiritual support from grace to have the courage to continue to move forward. We may not always recognize grace's support. We usually don't. We don't consciously understand it. But Spirit understands it, and Spirit recognizes it. So the last one, elderhood. So for the letter E, in grace, I'm going to say embrace, enlighten, encourage, empower. Embrace, enlighten, encourage, empower. Elderhood is that sweet, sweet time of life. Now, I know most of us are saying, Lord, Ahmondra, it's not. But it is. It is. Let me tell you why. Embrace. We embrace all that we've lived through and all that we've learned. We can sit down and say, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, the cup, the mug, the ink pen. I embrace those experiences. Now, those of you who aren't elders, you pay attention. We are enlightened beings. We now understand how to be grateful for the small things in life. We know how to take responsibility for ourselves. We've learned that acceptance allows us to stay in the flow of life. We've learned how to be committed, and we are courageously standing for what's good and right. We have those attitudes, I don't care, I'm standing here. I don't care. This is what I know to be right. And I'm standing courageously in this space. We are encouraged because we understand that life doesn't show up on our terms, but we understand that whatever we need is going to show up. So we're encouraged because of that. And we stand inside of grace as we're encouraged. As elders, we stand inside the energy of grace and we are empowered. That's living in divine right order. When we're in divine right order, we're empowered. Because we understand it doesn't matter what it looks like, everything is in divine right order. We allow grace to lead us. We understand grace is always leading us to the light, even when things appear the darkest. And this is what I want to leave us with today. Jesus stood inside of grace and he shared a brand new ideology. They thought Jesus was crazy. They was like, who is this person walking around with no shoes? Well, I guess he did have some shoes, but who is he walking around? Jesus was enlightened and empowered. And because of his enlightenment, he empowered others. Check it out. It's how many years ago? 2000 or something? He's still empowering us. Because he stood inside of grace. He was enlightened. This is what I want to leave you with today. As we move forward this year, we have to stand inside of the energy of grace. Our world may look contentious, it may look chaotic, it may be filled with turmoil over the next 8 months, but we have to stand firmly in understanding there's a divine presence, and it's called grace. We are empowered to make an impact on this world. Everything we do, think, say, feel is transmitted into a larger consciousness. It's called race consciousness. You have a choice. You can transmit into the race consciousness what you want our world to look like, or you can receive out of the race consciousness things you may not want to receive. You have a choice. When we stand in grace and don't waver, change occurs. Things happen that we never dreamed could happen. Just like disenfranchised people being enfranchised. I want to end with 2 quotes from Ernest Holmes. When thought reaches a higher degree of perfection, as the race consciousness unfolds and evolves, it will bring out a still greater development of life than we now know. When our race consciousness reaches a certain level, everything shifts. That's how black people got out of slavery. There was a consciousness that evolved. And when it hit a certain place, things shifted. That's the same thing happening. It has not stopped. We have the ability to bring that consciousness up and to shift it so that it shifts over and things shift and change for the better. We live in an eternal now, which is filled with good alone. Nothing else but good. Goodness and beauty follow us. Peace and joy accompany us. Happiness and wholeness fill our entire beings with the realization of love and perfection. The divine presence of grace is ours to have. Do not terrorize yourself out of grace. I have a blessing to these words and a blessing to each and every one of you. Thank you.